Hello and welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nache from NacheSnow.com. Welcome. All right, folks, if you're on YouTube, you actually see my smiling face. Normally the podcast is audio only, but Monique and I decided to record the video and she didn't mind me sharing the video with you guys too. So if you want to check it out, just go to nachesnow.com/YouTube and you could just hit subscribe while you're over there, but also check out our video. And then you'll get to see like all the faces I make during the interview. I've got like my serious face, my I can't stop laughing face, my like, oh my goodness face. But anywho, if you want to see all that, head on over to my YouTube channel and I have all kind of other goodies over there, crafting videos, productivity videos. Like that's just my like, hey, this is me, check out all the things channel. So NacheSnow.com/YouTube to check that out. And so, okay, who is my guest today? So I have Monique from Keep Chasing the Stars, and she is also the creator of the Visionary Journal. And you guys know how I love my journals. But anywho, on the episode today, we dig into all kinds of things, but I want to just focus on two things that I think that you guys will really enjoy. The first thing is about coaching and when you decide to like pay to have a coach, like why it's so important to make sure that you're actually ready to do so and so you can get the most for your money and the most bang for your buck. And then we also talk about what her main focus is and why she created Keep Chasing the Stars, which is why it's so important for you to push past your fears so you can do what you're meant to do. So we dig into that also. So I really think you guys are going to be really inspired by what she has to say and just her story in general. But a few housekeeping things. One, please go over to iTunes and rate me 5 stars. It helps people find the show. And if you've already done that, please share some of your favorite episodes with friends and family. That really helps me get discovered. And for all of you guys who've already done that, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. Also, don't forget, right now I'm pre-selling my time management course, How to Organize Your Life in Order to Make Time for Your Passion. So head on over to nachesnow.com/time just to find out more information about that, because you guys know I'm all about figuring out how you can make that space in order to do the things that you want to do. And if you've been listening to Studio 78 for a while and you're inspired by all of these amazing women, they have been able to figure that out, like how to make that space. And it doesn't matter if they're single or if they had 3 kids, they've figured out how to organize their time to do the thing that they love. All right? But enough of me chit-chatting. Let's go right into the interview. Here's Monique. Hello, Monique. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really good. I'm glad that I was able to meet with you at Craftcation, even though we never got to like connect, but I was like, okay, after I get back, I'll have to make sure that I send her an email.
I know, Craftcation, I had such a great time, but it was really, really tight timing for me. So I
Yes.
had so many presentations I was doing, and then I couldn't stay the entire time. So I felt like I rushed through the entire experience because it was like, okay, get to your presentation and get to the class you signed up for. And it was like when I came home, I was like, ah, I didn't get to meet that many people, and I don't think I took that many pictures, which is crazy because I normally take a ton of pictures when I go to conferences.
Yeah, no, I mean, but it was like, it's such a good conference too. So it's like, I think I read right before I left where they were like, left to fly out there. They're like, okay, if you don't get to go through everything, like, or go to everything rather, it's okay. And at first I was like, yeah, of course it's okay. Why would, and I was like, why wouldn't I get to go through everything? And then when I got there, I was like, okay, I understand now, because after like the 4th class, your brain is mush and you've been talking to so many people, you just want to do nothing for like 30 minutes, right?
That was totally me. I signed up to do the Make Your Own Espadrilles class, and I
Oh
was
yeah.
so excited about it. But I guess I just didn't pay attention when I registered that it was a 3 hour class and it was the first class in the morning. And I was trying to make some last minute tweaks to a presentation I was going to have to give earlier. And so I get up and I check the app, and the woman who was teaching the class was like, there's going to be, it's 3 hours. We're working through lunch. Make sure you bring snacks. And I was like, wait a minute. I haven't had breakfast and I don't have any snacks. So I was like, how is this going to work? And then right after lunch, I have to teach something. So I just skipped that class.
You were like, I
I
can't,
was like,
because
I
that would have
can't
been
do
too
it.
much pressure. That would've been-
Too much, way, way too much. And it's funny because in the class, I think the very next day, she sat next to me in one of like the craft classes, and we were talking. I was like, yeah, I skipped the class. And she was like, that was my class. But she was like, it worked out perfectly because somebody else had your shoe size and I only had one pair. So I was like,
Ah, nice.
yes.
Thanks goodness. But yes, but I was like, oh my goodness, okay, I couldn't connect with her, but I was like, I'm gonna definitely connect when I get back, because I just remember seeing your bio and then checking out your website. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to know her story. So no, thanks for coming on the podcast. But before we get into, how and why you started Keep Chasing the Stars, can you just tell the audience just a little bit about you and your background?
Okay, so we're not going to go way back. We're
Okay.
just going to go back to like the beginning of the idea for starting a business. So this year will actually be 10 years since I started a business online. Not
Mm.
necessarily this current version of my business, but just in totality. So I've done like blogging, fashion blogging. I've had an Etsy shop. I've had a t-shirt line, like a bunch of different things over the last 10 years. But after college, we all hit that conundrum of like, what are we gonna do now? It's like it's over now.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta go get a job. So my first job, I worked as an insurance adjuster, and that job was awful. Um, it's for a well-known insurance company where you can save 15% or less, or 50% or more by switching to them. But it was just awful. And it gave me literal nightmares. Like I was a claims adjuster, and I used to have claim nightmares about like some of the clients that would call nonstop.
Mm.
And it just like caused this anxiety because they're just calling, and it's like it's just a whole thing. But it used to give me nightmares. Like I used to have nightmares about having to answer that phone. So I realized like that can't be great. Probably
Right.
shouldn't work here anymore because I can't sleep because I'm dreaming about customers. So I stopped. It's crazy. So I stopped doing that, and I decided, I've always liked to help people, and I did really well in school. I'm gonna go be a teacher. And that job was doubly awful. So, so I
What
thought like
grade?
I taught sixth and seventh grade
Oh.
science, which in my mind was really exciting because I love science, and I always thought as a child I was going to grow up to be a scientist. So I was like, in a way, this is coming full circle for me. But it was awful because middle school kids don't care about science. They don't care about your lives. They only care about what's on TV and like who they're kissing in the bathroom between classes. Like that's as far as they can go. They can't see like the future and what's going to happen and why this is important now. And so it's just a really frustrating age to try to wrangle people and get them to realize like you need to know this information. They don't care.
Right.
It's like what is on TV? Who am I kissing? Who's going with who? Like that's all they care about.
Oh my
So after
god.
doing that, it was bad. After doing that for 2 years, I realized like something has to change. And during the spring break of that last year, I was in the craft store with my husband, and we saw a screen printing machine. And he was like,
Mm.
"You should buy that machine." And I was like, "No, that's dumb. Why would I do that? I don't know anything about screen printing. I can't even draw. I don't know what I would do." But by the end of spring break, I was convinced that maybe I do need that machine, so I went back and bought it.
He
And
planted
that
the seed.
he planted the seed. And that was like the start of what ended up becoming my clothing line called Anti Sparkle Apparel. So I didn't know anything about screen printing. I still can't draw. I didn't know anything about graphic design or how you even get a design onto a t-shirt, but I decided to learn, and I learned everything I could about screen printing.
Mm.
I learned really, really basic, like hacking together Photoshop skills to do graphics for these designs, which was bad because you don't use Photoshop to design things. But I didn't know that at the time. I just used what I could figure out. And so that went really well. I had the clothing line for I think maybe about 5 or 6 years before I ended up rebranding to Keep Chasing the Stars. And a lot of that was the path for business for me really changed and shifted after my
Mhm.
brother passed away.
Mm,
He passed away really unexpectedly in 2012, and it really just made me feel like, well, dang, what are you doing with your life? You have
mm,
this little business and it's cute, but I wanted to do so much more, and realizing that you can be so young and have so much potential just left on the table really affected me because I started thinking like, why aren't people doing more? Why aren't more people achieving their goals? Why are there only certain people that seem to get it and get the
mm,
urgency
mm,
that we need to do more? And so that kind of put me on this path to keep chasing the stars where I decided I wanted to speak, I wanted to do trade shows, I wanted to do other things like that. I thought I needed to have a bigger business and more clout and more success to do. And I just decided, no, I'm going to do them now. And so
mm.
that was like the big turning point for me and kind of what forced the rebrand to keep chasing the stars and what forced this shift in trying to help people realize there's a lot of possibility and it's possible for them too. And really kind of being like this cheerleader and push to get people to stop just sitting and waiting for life to give them something and really go out there and chase the stars and get what they want.
Love it. Okay, so much to unpack. Okay. so, so when we go back to the clothing line, like you get this screen printer and you're like, okay, I'm gonna like figure this out. At that point, for those years that you decided to do the clothing line, were you still working another job 9 to 5, or at that point did you just say like, you know what, let's see where this can take me, and then let me try to make enough money to like help out the household?
A combination of both. So the first year that after I left teaching, I didn't go back to work. I just worked on business related things. But then after a while, I realized like, okay, this is okay, but this is not sustainable. And I did
Mm-hmm.
need to contribute to our household because I have a son and a husband. So I did get a part-time job and I kind of worked like part-time jobs. Sometimes I would do like a full thing. I subbed a lot because that gave me the flexibility to work as much as I wanted to, but then I could take days off and it didn't affect anything if I didn't schedule myself for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked really well for a while, just subbing, because I mean, I already had teaching experience and I already knew the kids were awful. So it was fine. It was fine. You know, you just kind of figure out like where you fit in as a substitute teacher. But yeah, it was a little bit of both. Like there were years or months where things were really great and I just didn't really have to work. And then there were times where it's like, okay, so I need to go make some money.
Mm-hmm. And so, as far as like, the switch, like when you were like, okay, you know, I want to really create something truly meaningful, and kind of like make your mark in this world, and starting keep chasing the stars. What did that look like for you? Like, I know there's like a mindset change, but for you, did that look like reevaluating what your services are, like your presence online, like marketing, like what were all the things that you had to figure out to like now take your smaller business kind of like to the next level?
Mm. I think the biggest mindset shift is always the hardest one, which is one, deciding that this is what you're going to do and feeling confident enough to do it. I think the other part was just like the logistical things of like, how is this gonna work? Because I've worked in like it's still kind of a thing that I'm constantly kind of navigating in a way because I've always functioned at some level as a product-based business, and I
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
still mostly function as a product-based business. And so I feel like I always have this kind of ongoing war between the e-commerce side of my business and then like the
Mm-hmm.
coaching support side of my business. So I don't have a distinct answer because I'm actually back at this place every year. I get back to this place where I'm like, do these things exist together or are they separate?
Mm.
And I always feel like I have an answer, but then I come back to this place and I'm like, that answer doesn't feel good anymore. So I am I'm currently at that place where I'm like, okay, I think I'm finally at this place where I'm ready to just uncage my business in a way and
Mm.
uncage keep chasing the stars and not let it be settled to this e-commerce portion of my business and just let them be two separate entities, but they still kind of there's ways that they converge, but I really feel like they're two distinct things. So to answer that question, I think the logistical thing is really like the biggest mindset shift that I have
Mhm.
had to make between just, when you're a product-based business, all you have to do is worry about selling a product. And I don't think that there is as much, I won't say as much effort, but you don't need to convince people as much because
Mhm.
they're, at least for what I sell, the expense is not that great. So there
Mhm.
doesn't have to be this whole song and dance show about understanding investment and value. As whereas keep chasing the stars, there are greater investments. So there is more of that work in nurturing that has to come on where people like find my store and they're like, "Oh, it's a planner. I found it on Google. I watched the video and I buy it." So I'm like
Right.
trying to untangle these two worlds apart, and that has been kind of a thing that I'm always at constant war about.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally get it. It's so weird. I'm at like this weird place myself right now because I've done, let's say, affiliate marketing, right? So I've had like a tall website where I made money off of like Amazon and like, how you can join some of those ad networks and do some things. And I used to get like free clothing from some of the tall places. So it was like, okay, that was kind of cool. And then I've made money from actually selling products. Like I used to sell these laser cut goods. And I feel like that was even trickier because you're making them by hand versus like
Mm-hmm.
having them produced online and then printed on demand, right? And so it was just like, okay, this is great, but um, my price point is a little high. It's high to compensate for that, but what if my production gets out of control? Like, how truly am I going to be able to like keep up with it? And then I've done a little bit of coaching, a little bit of web design, a little bit of everything, right? And so now I'm kind of back at this place where I'm just like, okay, what can I do to like drive in some income but still keep my time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Which is
how
the conundrum.
yeah. So it's like, I'm like and I don't know if you're the same way. I loved having a product based business. I don't have it anymore because the place I used to get the laser cut light switch plates done, like where I would make them, went bankrupt. And so I don't do that anymore, but I do miss the like creating the packaging and then going to the post office and sending it off. It was just something special about that, even though most people hate it. But then I'm like, Nache, do you really want to go back into that? Because if you're successful at it, it can get a little overwhelming. And so I'm like, you need to focus on like this e-commerce side, which might generate more revenue, but then that also has its like own headaches. So I say all that to say, number one, I feel your pain. Like, but number two, I'm just curious for you because you do speaking engagements too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a podcast, you do speaking engagements, you sell products, and then you do some coaching. And then, am I missing anything?
I have a community that I'm like actively putting
Ooh,
together and running.
and a community, which is huge. And I've done that before with fashion trucks. Like we have like a Facebook group now that we have to like make sure it's maintained and we make sure like the rules are followed. So you have these five things, right? So out of your five things, I'm just curious, like, how do you decide? Because maybe you've had other things too. What to keep and what not to keep, and what to, I guess, focus your efforts on.
So that's kind of where I'm at right now, trying to distill things down into their simplest pieces. Like you with the product-based business, I love sending things to people in the mail. That is a constant. And like you're right, everybody wants to get away from having to pack things and ship things, but I love doing that. I really love it. And so I think I've considered many times getting rid of the products in my
Mm,
business and just saying I'm not going to do that anymore. but I just love doing it. And I always have ideas. I still have ideas for product-based things that I want to create and give to people and send and, you send that good energy out into the world. So I think I think I've just reconciled the fact that that's always going to be a constant for me because that is I get such a high off of creating things, like
Mhm.
having an idea and taking that idea and making it into something. And it's not even a whole thing of like, oh, let me go to the store and like buy some things and put them together and send this to people. It's like when I created that planner for the first time, it was just this random idea. And I was like, I'm going to figure out how to make it. And I figured out how to design and manufacture an entire planner system from like scratch in Google searches. So that really makes me feel good. So I think there's always going to be some type of a product component to my business.
Mm.
But as far as the other things go, um, it hasn't gotten too manageable, too unmanageable. So with the speaking engagements, I do those, but they're usually such a great lead time that I can plan around it, so it's not a huge deal, and I'm not doing so many that it's overwhelming. As far as like coaching, so that is something that I'm actively thinking about how to scale back, which was kind of
Mhm.
the thought process behind starting a community and having a paid community so that way I could tap more into this one to many idea
Mm.
because even though coaching is lucrative and you can pay more money for it, it requires a lot of bandwidth
Mhm.
to have, calls with people for extended periods of time. And then I think the other thing is I find that oh, I feel like I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. I find that sometimes people think that they're ready for coaching or they need coaching, but it's not the best fit for their resources
Mm.
at that
Mhm.
time. A lot of
Mhm.
people come for coaching and they're just not ready. They're not
Mhm.
ready for a lot of reasons. They just really aren't ready. They're not
Mhm.
ready for the information, they're not ready for the strategy. They're just not ready. And so
Mhm.
I find that we spend a lot more time working on mindset things and encouraging things and little small things that I think that they could figure out by themselves if
Mm.
they just spent the time and the energy. So I'm trying to circumvent some of that by funneling people into like, this is a small investment. We will cover some of these things, but it's not going to be like as in depth, and I'm not going to sit on a call with you for hours. But we'll still cover like a lot of the basic foundational things that you need to get over to make this thing doable. So I think
Mhm.
when it comes to figuring out where to spend time, I think there's always going to be a chunk of time that's dedicated to product stuff, but I am trying to actively funnel people more into this community type situation where I can, leverage my time a little bit better and still be able to offer people access to me without having to be like stuck on the phone with them for hours at a time. Just saying like, you can do it. I know you
Yeah.
can.
Right. No, I completely understand where you're going with that because I used to offer a little bit of coaching, but then when I did it, I would get like, okay, upset is like a strong word, but let's say disappointed when I'd be like, okay, all you need to do is this, and this, and they didn't do any of it. And I'm like, but
They
that's all you
don't
need
do
to
any
do.
of it.
That's all you need to do. It's like, and it's just like it's like kind of frustrating. And even if, though it's not coaching, like I even stopped doing web design and graphic design, and people are like, no, Nache, you should totally do it, and I'm like, no,
Mm-mm.
because
Nope.
sometimes people aren't really even ready to like maintain the site, and then it's kind of like this gift that keeps on giving. Like I'm like, okay, I've given you this beautiful site, and then either they're constantly coming back to me to do really small things that they could like figure out right for themselves, and I'm just like, oh my god, yes, they paid good money for it, but it's like I'm paying for this like indefinitely. so, so my thing is like I definitely want to get away from things that even though maybe I'm good at, like it could be frustrating. So I kind of understand like where you're coming from in the coaching part because I mean, when you do find that perfect person that is ready and they do like exactly what you tell them to do and then you see their business flourish, there's something special about that. But I mean, I mean, that's gonna be like maybe 30-40%.
Well, if you, I mean, if you think about it from just a logical standpoint, like the whole readiness piece, like sometimes I just sit there and I'm like, you just paid me all this money and you didn't do any of the stuff that you were supposed to do last, like 2 weeks ago for us to build on that for this week. So now we're doing some of those things on the call that you were supposed to do. And I'm like, it becomes such a draining thing because I'm like, you're not getting all the value that I want to provide you. And then like there's this
Right.
sense of guilt because then I feel like, well, they're not going to get the results and that's what they came for. And now I feel bad because you paid all this money and you didn't get the results, but at the same time, I can't do the work for you. So it just becomes like this like exhausting, draining thing because there are times where it feels like you're dragging people along
Hmm.
on, and it's their journey. So it's weird. And to your point about, the perfect customer, when you do find when I want to say when you do find when you connect with the right people, that is awesome. And I guess, maybe there needs to be a conversation about filtering out people better. But a lot of
Hmm.
times, sometimes it's hard to know what somebody's like real work ethic is until
Yeah.
you're a couple of weeks in and like they started out great and now you're like, well, what are you doing? It's
Right.
that what happened? Like you were
Right.
doing so well 2 weeks ago. What happened? So sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think listeners, for you guys out there, I think this is a good lesson for you too. It's like, if you're going to sign up for something, make sure you're committed. Because number one, I have been that lazy student, because I've signed up for different coaching things or programs or courses. And sometimes I'm going to be like the A student. They're going to be like, oh my God, Nache, you're a rock star. And then other times I am for sure, they're like, why'd you even bother? Because depending on what was going on in my life, I really didn't have time to commit, or maybe I chose the wrong program like for what I was trying to do, and so maybe I wasn't as engaged because really it wasn't the program that was for me, right? And so
Hmm.
I think for the listeners out there, like just kind of a lesson learned is to really do your homework, make sure it's right for you, and then also really make sure you're going to be committed to doing the work. So
Yes. And
yeah.
that is the important part. Like you can pay for courses and coaching with all the money in the world and that still doesn't guarantee you any success because a lot of this is just based on doing the work. And even though I can tell you strategy and I can lay out a plan, it doesn't matter if you don't actually do it.
Right. And then on your website, like on your homepage, and people who are listening, if you're not driving, check out keepchasingthestars.com. You have shut down the chorus of shut down the chorus of fear and take action towards your goals. Get the fear guide. So, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I do know a lot of the listeners out there have these great ideas, but fear is holding them back. So, kind of, what is your message that you're putting out around this whole fear thing?
Oh my gosh. So this is like my favorite thing ever. And it's currently like this is one of the things that's driving this shift in my business to more of a community style thing, just because this fear guide. So I wrote this fear guide last summer. I didn't have any intentions of writing. I call it a tiny book. I didn't have any intentions of writing this book. I just thought I was going to make like this 10-step, 3-page PDF about fear. And once I started putting together the outline and the driving thing was the messaging around the chorus of fear, because it's something that I say all the time, but I realized I've never explained to anybody what I mean by that, what the chorus of fear is. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to write this PDF. And 3 days and like 4,000 words later, I was like, wow, like you just wrote a small book. And I just thought immediately, like, people should be able to have this like in their hands and not just read it as just a
Mm.
PDF. So I formatted it and put it on Amazon Create Space and made copies. And I was going to be speaking at an event a month from then. And I sent it to the event coordinator. And she got back to me the next day and she was like, scrap that other thing you're doing. Like, I want you to talk on this. She's like, we're going to rearrange the schedule to fit you in to like talk about this on the stage. And this is like, do this instead. And I just thought like, okay,
Okay,
all
because now
right,
you have
or
to change your presentation, right?
yeah, like so
Like,
now this thing that I've just written a few days ago, I have to turn it into a presentation. So I gave
right.
that presentation, and that's the first time that I've ever presented something to someone or to a group of people, and people were in tears. Like there were
Mm,
several women crying, and I just remember just being like, "Oh, okay."
mm,
Um,
mm.
but the big thing about that, the big message was during that presentation, there were two ladies sitting in the front, and towards the end of the presentation, I told them, I said, "Don't let fear have all the fun." And I heard them audibly gasp, and they turned to each other and they said it. And then they like started feverishly writing it down, and I was like, "Okay, so that's a thing." So the message about fear that I'm constantly telling people is like, you can't let fear have all the fun. So
Yeah.
many times we have ideas, we have things that we want to do, but we immediately go to all the negatives, all these fearful thoughts, all these excuses, all of these I can't do, what ifs, and we don't really spend any time really thinking about like what amazing things can happen. So we
Mm-hmm.
let fear have all the fun from the beginning because we just go to this negative place of I can't do it, I don't know how, I don't have, and just all these places. And so right now, a lot of my focus is encouraging people to not let fear have all the fun, to go
Mm-hmm.
out and do the thing that they want to do and realize that the ideas that you have, the universe gave those ideas to you. And they gave it
Yeah.
to you because you are the perfectly right person to create it, not me,
Mm-hmm.
not Nache. Like it's you. And so if you let fear continue to have all the fun, you're not going to do those things. And you need to do those things because they are important. There are other
Mm-hmm.
people who need those kind of things from you because you're the right person to help them get unstuck. And now
Yeah.
they're stuck because you won't do the thing that you're supposed to do.
I love it. But it's so true, right? Because so you know, I feel like luckily I'm surrounded by like these amazing women that have like all of these talents and then I'm like, "Oh my god, you should do this." And they're like, no, no, no. No one's going to ever buy that. Who would want to listen to me? I don't want to put myself out there on social media. Like, people are going to think I'm a fraud. I mean, the list goes on and on. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I need you all to stop, right? Because I'll put anything out there. Some stuff fails, some stuff works. I've
That's
gotten
how it
some
is.
weird comments on YouTube. I'm like, I don't, it's like you can't, like, to me, be afraid of failure or be afraid of making fun of or be afraid that you're not good enough. And if even I feel like if you are afraid, it's like embracing the fear, right? And then just
Hmm.
still doing it anyway. Cause I know it's like kind of hard to get over that hump, but it's like, I feel like so many people, I don't know, let it really hold them back for being great. So I don't know. Did you have like any tips for some of the folks out there who are like, okay, I hear you, Monique and Nache. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what I'm saying? They're like,
Like, all right, you could do it, but I don't
right.
know.
But I'm still scared. Like, I don't think people will want to hear from me. Like, yeah, like, what would your advice be just for them to, like, push past that fear or embrace their fear? Like, what are some of the things they should do or think about?
So I have two pieces of advice. The first one is you don't have to be fearless. I never try to tell people that you need to become fearless. That is not my goal at all. My goal is to get you to quiet your fear long enough to take the next small step. And that's all that you need to do, is to keep taking the next small step. I think a lot of times we think we need to do something huge and monumental, but that's not the case. Just a small step. Baby steps eventually become adult steps. And if you continue making enough progress in one direction, you'll get to where you need to go, even if it's just tiny incremental things. That's one thing. The biggest thing, and I think the biggest difference maker when I teach this workshop on fear is asking people, what is the cost of your inaction? So,
Mm,
you being
mm,
afraid, you staying in this fearful state, there is a cost. You pay that price in either physical, financial, emotionally, like there's a toll to you. And a lot of times we immediately go to finances. But if you take finances out the picture and you just think of the emotional toll, if you get a book, I did this workshop, a woman raised her hand and said she's been wanting to write a book for 14 years. And
Mm.
another woman raised her hand and said, I have one up on you. I've written 3 books, but I haven't published any of them. And I'm like,
Wow.
the two of you are sitting here. You've been carrying this weight of wanting to write a book for 14 years. So think about what that's costing you. There's
Mm.
like a sadness, there's a feeling of being incomplete and not fulfilled and like not doing the thing that you know that you want to do and you've been carrying it around for 14 years. And then
Mhm.
you, on the other hand, are carrying around 3 whole books. Like
Right.
3 whole, you made the effort to write 3 whole books and you haven't
Yeah.
published a single one of them. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's an emotional toll that feels like, in a way, failure and disappointment because you spent so much time doing something and you didn't
Mhm.
put it out
Mhm.
there. So there's that emotional toll, and then that emotional toll translates into physical tolls like stress and not being able to sleep and eating and just like all of these different things. So it's like you really have to think about what is it costing you? Like really, what is it costing you to not go after the thing that you really want to do? And I think once you get clear on that and you realize that that's painful and that's a discomfort, you'll realize that taking a risk is uncomfortable, but also staying the same is uncomfortable. And you
Mm.
have to make a decision between which one of those discomforts feels more painful.
Mm. No, I love it. I think it was in to your first point, I believe it was Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic book, and she said something to the effect of like, she doesn't want anybody to be fearless because like only psychopaths are. So
Exactly.
right. If you are
Exactly.
without fear, we have a problem, right? So I think like people need to keep that in mind. And I love like that second point that you made too, because yeah, I mean, everybody, I mean, keeps like all of these ideas bottled up because they think no one wants to like look at them or for the fear of failure. But it's just like, just put it out there. You never know what's going to happen. So hopefully they ended up publishing those books. But I was going to ask you, like, in your business, especially in the last 5 years since you've started Keep Chasing the Stars, since you decided to make that switch, has there been anything that really kind of scared you a little bit where you had to be like, okay, let me kind of like swallow this fear and do the thing, whatever that thing was?
Oh yeah. So the visionary journal, that the planner that I decided to make, I decided that there were really specific things I wanted to do, and I was using a local printer that couldn't do it. So I decided I wanted to get this manufactured in China,
Mm.
but I didn't know how I was going to pay for it, and I couldn't afford it, and I didn't even know how to manufacture something in China. So,
Right.
so I decided like, okay, I'm going to do a Kickstarter to fund this new production run. It took me 2 years to convince myself to do that Kickstarter.
Mm.
2 whole years. I did it in, what are we in 2019? So I did it in 2016, the fall of 26, $50,000 in 30 days, and that was enough to cover production. Um, but 2 years, like that's two
Mm.
years that I sat there trying to figure out, could I do this thing? And then 90 days to actually from start of a Kickstarter to like
Yeah.
finish to actually get it done. So look at the time frame there, like
Right.
90 days versus 2 whole years, which is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and I understand like the fear around that too, because especially with Kickstarter, right? If you put up this amount and if you don't raise it,
You get
you
nothing.
get
You get
nada.
nothing.
And that is fearful too, right? You're like, "Oh my God, I put this out there. What if I don't raise enough? What are people going to think if I don't raise enough?" I mean, there's so many things around that you really have
Yeah,
to like talk
now
yourself.
I'm asking people for money and that feels
Right?
weird.
Yeah. So kudos to you for doing that.
Well, thank
Um,
you.
yeah. And then as we wrap up here, I know that you have like a podcast too. So can you tell the listeners what it's called and what it's about?
Yeah, so Pimp Your Brilliance. Pimp Your Brilliance. It's the name of my podcast, and it is a show focusing or really targeted for like side hustlers and aspiring creative entrepreneurs. And I interview all types of amazing creative entrepreneurs, and I try really hard to find people who are doing things that are out of the box that
Mm,
people wouldn't think that they could make money doing. So two examples that I love to share is like I interviewed a woman, Mo, and she is the founder of Pipsticks, which you've
mm,
probably seen online. It's a really popular sticker subscription club.
mm-hmm.
And like these sticker people are like committed to
Oh,
the
they
sticker game. I
hardcore.
mean,
It's a
it's
culture.
hardcore.
Yeah.
And
Oh
and
my.
she's successful. She has a storefront and everything out in California selling stickers. Stickers, y'all. And then I interviewed a guy. He has a company called Deli Fresh Threads, and it is a t-shirt line dedicated to the king of meals, which he feels is the sandwich. And everything is about sandwiches. And I mean, it's so well branded. Everything when you order a t-shirt, he packs it like a packed lunch. So you get it all wrapped up in like the deli paper and a paper bag with like a lunch ticket. It's really, really cute and really neat and niche. Um, and again, he just decided that it was the thing that he felt most passionate about, and so he wanted to turn it into a business. So I
Mm.
try really hard to find like stories like that as much as I can. And then I also do solo shows where I share like bits and pieces of my own journey, tips, tricks, strategies, and things that I'm trying and that I'm learning.
Mm, I love it. And before we get to the wrap up question, I just have one thing to say about the guy's business. And that kind of goes back to products, which I really, really miss right now. But the packaging, right, is everything. I feel like on
It
Etsy, I
is.
got most comments from my packaging. I used to like hand letter all the packages. It was kind of ridiculous, right? But I mean, but that packaging, man, people, if they get something in the mail and that package is just right, they will tell all their friends. Number one, it just brings them joy, right? And then they're just more willing to share and take pictures. Like to me, like
And the
packaging
social
is
proof, yes.
everything. Yes, yes.
You are exactly right. And you know, about his business, he's well, not local to me anymore, but we used to live in the same city. He does these sandwich eat ups where like he invites his community to come out all around the city of Orlando and they eat sandwiches together at these different restaurants and he sells his shirts there and I mean like the branding is stellar. As I'm talking, I'm like, I need to have him back on the show. He needs to talk about some more
It
things.
was
But
so
I mean, it's like it's
good.
just so, so good. And it's just that little creative thing. And I mean, if that's not the epitome of like possibility when it comes to turning an idea into something, I don't know what is.
No, I completely agree with you. Like, I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and I was like, "There is money to be made in these streets."
It
I was
is. It
like,
is. Go get your money, whatever it is. Go
exactly.
get it. There are people who like all kinds of quirky things, man. And I mean, like
Yeah.
his they are in these streets. I mean, he's been doing this for several years, going to these restaurants and eating sandwiches together in their sandwich t-shirts. Like
Oh
it's a
my
thing.
god. Oh god. That's hilarious. So hopefully people this inspires you. So definitely check out her podcast. Okay, so just a couple wrap up questions. The first one is how do you stay organized? Like do you have any tools, techniques, anything like what's your thing? Like how do you keep it all together?
So I like to call myself a paper planner living in a digital world. So a lot of things have to be planned on paper first. I can't, I have to have the information like out of my brain and on paper so I can see it and process it and figure out where it needs to go. So I always have a notebook and I always have my planner. So I use the visionary journal. And then once everything's all planned and it looks great, I put it into Asana and
Mm.
I run like Asana is like my second brain in my hub. And so I just kind of like everything goes in there. And whatever like task I have for the week, I just pull them from Asana, put them in my planner for the week, and then I'm good to go. And that's kind of how I stay on top of things. And my calendar, everything, if it goes in my
Mm-mm.
Google Calendar, then we're good. But if you tell me something and I didn't put it in my calendar, it's not
Sorry.
happening because I'm gonna forget.
Very cool. And I forgot to ask you too. Now, are you like a one woman show or do you have like a team or hire freelancers or contractors?
Contractor. So I'm a
Okay.
one-woman show that hires out a couple of things. So mainly podcast editing. I was just so over that. So I hired that out to somebody else because it was just too much. And then I have a virtual assistant that helps with like admin and community engagement type stuff.
Oh, perfect. And then my next question is, do you have a hobby? And if so, what is it?
Yes, I do have a hobby. So I am, well, if this is really a hobby. Um, so I am a proud beach bum. Like I live in a beach town. And I mean, it's the only redeeming quality of this town because this town is so slow and this is where old people come to die, literally. But we live really close to like super beautiful beaches. So whenever, and I mean, I live in Florida, so the weather is pretty much beach weather all year, except for like maybe 2, 3 months out of the year. I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time at the beach, laying there, collecting shells, looking at
Mhm.
dolphins, just sitting there, staring at the water, whatever I can do to be close to the water. That's like my main hobby, staring at the ocean, if that is a
Hey,
hobby.
hey, that's a
And reading.
hobby. I said, yep.
I also read a lot, so I feel like that's a saving grace. I'm staring at the ocean with a book, so that's what I like to
Okay.
do.
And then last but not least is please tell the listeners where to find you, your social media handle, your website, anything that you want them to know about your biz.
All right, so you can find me at keepchasingthestars.com. That's all one word. Everything is spelled appropriately. There's no weird letters or things in there. Keep chasing the stars. Online, or on Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Star Chasers Only. And those are the main two places that I hang out. Um, and yeah, that's it, because you can find the podcast on Keep Chasing the Stars. So those are the places to find me.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
So what did I tell you guys? She was great, right? Loved, loved, loved having Monique on the show. I mean, it really is about pushing past that fear. I've recently just talked to her again. I just know that we're going to continue to be business besties. She's given me so many different ideas on how I can expand my business. So you guys are going to be seeing some changes in the next even coming weeks based on the conversation that or conversations really that I've had with her. But she is really inspiring, really knows her stuff, and really inspirational. So I am really, really glad that I was able to connect with her because of Craftcation. And you guys are seeing the theme here, right? One conference has connected me to all of these amazing people. And together, I feel like we're just going to be able to have such an impact on our community and really inspire other women to do what they love too. So I'm just really excited about what all of us are going to bring in the near future and, even 2 to 3 years from now after we grow and learn from each other. But anywho, if you want to get the show notes for this page, you can head on over to nachesnow.com/85. All of the links that she mentioned in this episode will be over there, including her social media, her website. You will also be able to get some of the links she mentioned, like Pipsticks, the Daily Fresh Thread, so you can check them out. Asana, which she uses for organization. And I've even linked to her Kickstarter too, just so you can see how she organized her page and how much she was able to raise from Kickstarter. Even though we didn't really dig into that, I always think it's really good just to see, how somebody kind of set up those type of things. So I've linked to that over there also. So nachesnow.com/85. And as always, please share this episode and please comment on the post and just tag Monique and I and let us know if you enjoyed this episode and if you're going to take any action steps because of this episode. Okay? Well, folks, if you're on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed seeing us. Please comment below if you did. And to everyone, see you guys next week. Take care. Bye.